Hey, listeners, welcome back to another episode of Who Made You the Boss, a professional podcast that's all about how we show up in the careers we love without sacrificing our whole selves. One industry I have been particularly intrigued by has been the entertainment world. I have a few friends that exist in this space, and I just see the way that they hustle because of their passion for the craft. And since we celebrate versatility and creativity on this podcast, I wanted to bring that unique perspective today. And I was fortunate enough to connect with the fascinating writer, artist, and director, Allisyn Snyder. You might actually know Allisyn as Heather Wilmore from NBC's AP Bio, or as Zora from Disney's Sonny with a Chance and So Random. Yet what truly sets her apart is this relentless pursuit of creativity, and we really dive into that today. We talk a lot about it based off of her 21-year tenure in the entertainment industry. She literally began this career when she was 4 years old. She was under the name Allisyn Arm, and she had early roles in shows like Friends. Heard of it? In 2014, she launched the YouTube persona Astrid Clover, which then led her to producing over 350 episodes and amassed a huge following. In 2016, Allisyn and her husband, Allisyn Snyder, ventured into film production. They created Watch the Footage, WTF Productions. Their work has gained distribution through Fun Size Horror, and that has landed on Amazon's Shockdale Party series. And we talk a lot about what it means to work with your partner, which is something I can totally relate to, and how we evolve personally and professionally, and how we support one another's in that evolution as humans. So join us today as we explore the multifaceted journey of Allisyn Snyder, artist, actress, writer, and director whose creativity knows no bounds, as she teaches us what it means and who made you the boss. Awesome. I am so excited to welcome Allisyn Snyder today. Allisyn, thanks for being here on Who Made You the Boss.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Cody put us in touch and he said we were very similar and I'm sure he's correct. So it's very nice to meet you.
You as well. Yes. Cody, for those who don't know, is my brother-in-law who I adore, who lived in LA for, over a decade and is still working as an actor. And you guys probably connected, I'm sure, in that field.
Yeah. Same manager.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. Okay, cool. Yeah. You didn't tell me the specifics. You just said you two have to meet. And so here we are meeting and recording it for the world to see. So I'm excited to dive in with you.
Absolutely. Same.
Yeah. Well, I shared with the listeners a little bit more about your background, but I think it's important to note that everyone listening to this is going to be coming from a different background themselves, right? We've got some people in just various fields, but I've always been really intrigued by the entertainment industry and like the art of the hustle that you have to do in this specific industry. And you began your career at such a young age. So you probably know this industry well. From what Cody has told me about you, it sounds like from an early age as well, you kind of decided to take the reins of your own life and say, I'm doing this thing. I'm making me the boss. I want to be the leader of my own life. And you're like, now you're calling the shots at your production company, all the fun stuff. So can you tell us just more about that journey? Like what brought you into the place where you could say like, all right, this life is mine. I'm taking control. I'm going to be in charge of what I'm doing next.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a funny thing. I never sat down and said, I want to be someone's boss.
Yeah.
I just had ideas and wanted to pursue them. And then as I gathered people to help me, whether that was, help from friends and family or hired, creators, I just sort of, circumstantially ended up becoming people's boss. And that has actually like stressed me out, like the chain of command. I much prefer like collaborative work. I think I've been an artist this whole time, kind of stepping into random work here and there. And the way that I'm approaching my production company and just kind of my work in general is just, doing what I love and then trying to get enough other brilliant minds on it that maybe we can actually make some money at this thing. And yeah, I just kind of take it one day at a time, and I just try to trust myself that like, hey, I have a wealth of knowledge, and I always have that Liam Neeson, like I have a very particular set of skills. And it's like, sometimes I'm just like, oh gosh, should have gone to college. Like, what am I doing? But I'm like, no, it's okay. Like I know like things that are going to get me to that next level of like, I just want to be around friends and family and creating all the time. And
I love it. Well, I think that's honestly it's why I named the podcast Who Made You the Boss, because I think for the better leaders in the world, they're not the individuals who are on a power trip that were like, I am making myself the boss. Here's my crown. It's exactly what you just said. Like, you've got kind of something in you. You're listening to that. And it just so happens that by proxy, you're now leading people because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've always been called a leader. I tend to, my dad has always told me like, don't speak unless you have something to say. And I definitely believe like, you can gain so much by just listening. And I consider myself a listener. But then when it comes to like, okay, now we're doing a group activity or a team thing, or somebody needs to step in and like take charge of this, I can definitely, step into that public speaking kind of role.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like he's been a very big influence on you. I was listening to some of your other podcast interviews, and
oh my gosh,
I can relate to that. Like, my dad is my mentor, but was he in the entertainment industry?
Yeah, he's a musician, and
Cool.
and yeah, that dude, he's the coolest person around. Everybody who meets them is just like blown away. That he's my dad because he just looks like my older brother. He always makes jokes about being a vampire, which people don't always get sometimes. Because people are like, oh my God, you look so young. How do you do it? He's like, I just, try to stay out of the sun and stay away from garlic. And people are like, oh, interesting. Didn't know garlic was it. He's like, don't worry about it. Never mind.
Hilarious. Well, and so it's creativity that runs in the family, really. Like,
he's just kind of he's just an artist. He's kind of a goofball, and him and I just loved doing silly voices with each other and writing down ideas, drawing pictures. Like, it was just a constant like collaboration of art and acting was something that I kind of stumbled into, happened to take an acting class, and the teacher there loved my work. And he just, was always bringing coloring pencils and paper, and we were always writing scripts in the waiting room. And I'm still pursuing many things.
Well, it sounds like it's like the creative process itself is kind of what you love. Is that safe to assume? Yeah.
No, 100%, 100%. Yeah. And I've been learning to trust that more. My therapist actually recommended this phenomenal book, Julia Cameron, The Artist's Way.
Oh my God. Yes. I 100%. So have you gotten through it yet? Or I'm
working my way through it, but I started the morning pages at the beginning of this year. Yeah. Life-changing. I read, I started reading The Artist's Way. And right before that, I read The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up.
Funny. What an interesting combo.
Game changer too. That is a game changer too. Those are those two books, and then there's another one, Many Lives, Many Masters, and those are like the trifecta that I always recommend to people. Of like, this is have your ego death, get rid of everything, and then like start journaling.
Well, I do think about the life-changing art of tidying up being mentioned in the same sentence as The Artist's Way. Like, I will definitely take your recommendations on this because I could not agree more on The Artist's Way. I like that's a struggle that I've personally had because I started as a creative, like writing was my first love. And then I kind of was like, well, I can't figure out a way to make money by this. So, and my dad is very funny. He's like super business minded, and he'd always give me a hard time because I was getting my English major. And at one point, the cocktail was essentially like English major with an emphasis on poetry with a minor in French. And he was like, so you're going to write like French Hallmark cards? Like, how are you going to turn that into a living? And so I wound up going into business because I love it as well. And there is a creative aspect, especially at the start of a business. But it actually took The Artist's Way for me to start pulling back out that part of me that was like, all right, there's a steady heartbeat here of creativity. And how do I get back to it?
Yeah, that's funny. My brain, I heard that and I was like, oh, making French greeting cards. That sounds awesome.
That sounds lovely,
like, that's
right?
100% because I make greeting cards and I'm like, oh, I can draw and Valentine's Day is coming up. And then I'm like looking up like print greeting cards and I'm like, oh, there's like next day flyers is nearby. I'll just
that's hilarious. I mean, it's a business somewhere. Someone's got to do it.
Yeah, that's the thing is that I kind of realized like there's so many niche jobs and like so many jobs that just require like exactly what that person can do. So you just got to like figure out what your resume actually looks like rather than trying to like think of the job and be like, okay, well, what do I have in that field? It's just like, I don't know, come up with what your resume looks like and then say, okay, what jobs can I do with this?
And that's so true. But like you've been literally working since you were 4 years old. So I feel like you've gotten like some time on figuring this part of life out that most people don't get until they're like in their teens, if not early 20s.
Yes. Yeah. My dad definitely did a really good job of keeping us, grounded in a sense. You know, we were always doing it for fun, and like the money that it brought in and the, you know, kind of career that it was building was definitely like a plus, but he was always paying attention and tuned into like making sure that I was having a good time.
That is super important. Well, and I heard you, I think probably on the same interview that I heard you talking about your dad, you mentioned kind of like taking time yourself to step back and evaluate even like your time management, because you had been at that grind for so long. I'm just kind of curious, like, it sounds like it led to burnout for a little while. Is that correct?
Oh my God. Yeah. So the artist way, something that I realized by doing the morning pages, because, you know, I was, you know, starting the book because I was trying to read every day was like a New Year's resolution. I was like, at least just like 5 minutes every day. Cause I had a book club going during quarantine, and it was fantastic being like kind of forced to read a book every month because there's a whole group of people. But yeah, this year, you know, I wanted to make sure that I was dedicating my time into my films. We're in post-production for 2 features right now. And so it's just a lot of screen time, which just drains me. And so I was like having trouble with the work-life balance, trying to be like, okay, if I can at least read 5 minutes. And it recommended the morning pages, and it's 3 full pages of like stream of consciousness, handwritten journaling. And I'm using like binder paper. And that is like, it takes me a long time. And I have like nice handwriting, and my thoughts, like I write pretty cohesively, and it genuinely takes me a good hour and a half to get through like 3 pages of journaling, just the way that I do it. And I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or I haven't finished the book yet or anything, but what it made me realize was just like, it was so hard to set aside time for myself to do anything other than what I feel like I'm getting emailed about, and like all these kind of like floating deadlines. I guess I started paying more attention to deadlines are all like made up by people. And so like, who's making up the deadline, and is it important, or did they just pick a random day? Because when people ask me for deadlines, I'm typically kind of picking a random day.
Totally.
So it just kind of like, it made me rethink like how I schedule and prioritize, and just being like, if I'm feeling like way too tired and like it looks like tomorrow's going to start getting stressful, it doesn't matter what I had on my plate. Like, I need to go to bed and I'll figure it out in the morning, kind of thing.
Completely. It's so interesting, just kind of picking up what you're talking about. Like, in starting a company, one of the early rules that I learned was like, instead of trying to work in your business constantly, is take some time to work on your business. And that requires like intentional carving out of time. But for you yourself as a creative are your business. So like, it's a
weird world. It's like, if you're not eating and sleeping, your business suffers.
Yeah.
But I think that goes for anything. I think every business is creative in a sense. Anybody that I talk to who's any sort of entrepreneur, and just the way that they have to approach things, their whole world, like, it's a lot like film production in any way. You know, you're hiring similar types of people and making, you know, phone calls and constructing emails. And I think, you know, all of that takes brain power, and you're not going to have brain power if you're not eating and sleeping.
Good point. This is the basics, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious to camp out too, because we haven't talked about this yet, but I feel like it's so rare to meet other people who have this scenario in common. But you work with your husband. And I also work with my husband. And I think when people find that out, they usually are like, oh God, they immediately imagine themselves in that scenario. And they're like, never, I could never. And
people's questions make me question their relationships.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. They kind of project on you, don't they?
Totally. It's really interesting to like kind of get like a quick sneak peek into their marriage just by seeing the way that they interpret, like, oh, you guys work together. But the reaction is different if people are talking with Dylan and I when they find that out, or if they're just talking with one of us. Because if you see us together, just our body language and like the way we move and the way we like finish each other's sentences, people just kind of get it when they see us. If they're like, oh, that makes sense. That
makes sense. Wait, at what point did you decide to start working together? And or was that before you actually decided to like be together? What did that timeline look like for you?
Everybody who knows me works with me. I feel bad about it sometimes, but as a creative, I guess not. It's just like I'm constantly creating and working on things. When I was little, I would invite friends over on the weekends to film short movies and constantly doing like photo shoots. And I'd randomly just like bring a camera to school, take pictures of my friends. And then because I heard that people Photoshop magazines, I remember looking at magazines as a kid, my mom being like, oh, they make this look like their lips look bigger and they change their hair and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that sounds fun. So I like got into Photoshop as like a small child, and I'd like make my friends' lips really big, and I put like crazy like I'd look up celebrity hairstyles and put them on them. And
so by proxy, Dylan was destined to work with you, is what you're saying.
I had my Astrid Clover web series. A lot of my friends and family and even some people who have passed away have all guest starred on it, and it's kind of this like video diary of my life. In this wild way, because it was just something where when I started it, I had just started selling sketches to AwesomenessTV, who was airing them on Nickelodeon. And it was kind of this like, oh, I can, write comedy and, get it out there. And I started this YouTube channel. I originally wanted it to kind of be more of a variety show and doing different characters, but I really liked the Astrid Clover character. And then I just kind of kept going with it. And then I kept going. And then it was several years later. And it was just every single week. I was like, well, I can't stop now. I've got this streak going. And it was just something where it was like, oh, like I would have these fun ideas because my dad and I would brainstorm. Like, it'd be Monday or Tuesday, we'd call each other up, be like, do you have any Astrid ideas? And be like, okay, hold on, let me open the notes on my phone. I wrote a couple things down, and like, and it was always like, okay, so we'd be pitching ideas, and I'm like, all right, well, that requires like 10 people and a dog. Like, how are we going to get 10 people and a dog by Thursday? And of course, Cody's one of the people that I'm always calling up for those kinds of things.
That sounds like the perfect Cody phone call, to be honest. Like
that's the thing, is that I attract the right people by living this lifestyle. And the people who tend to not like it, or they don't show up, or they don't come back, it's like, no, I don't want anybody here who's like not having fun. Like the whole purpose of this for me is to create and have fun with my friends. And so like, please, come and enjoy it if you're gonna like be here and create with us.
Well, you know what? I think it was even The Artist's Way that talks about synchronicity and the idea that like, we're constantly putting out what we want to attract if we are being open to it. And if we are, it's almost like you've just created this vortex that you've pulled the people into, and they love it as well because they love you and they want to support you. And I bet you're bringing out 100%. The fun side of them that they may not have even known they had.
Yeah. It's the kind of thing where, okay, I'll give you an example of a shoot that I just did. So it's so fun to see how connections get made. But basically, through a film that Dylan and I worked on as producers, we met this actress and her boyfriend who loved working with us, and they were producing this like large scale short film out in Iowa that they recruited us for. And while I was out there, one of the production like assistants, who then became kind of like in an art department position, she was phenomenal, and she was in a punk band and called Big B Woods, and I like pulled them up on Spotify, and they have this song called Nun Fight, and it was like she's like screaming like, it's a fun night for a nun fight. I was like, this is so funny, this is wild, like, because she's this little, like, she's got so much of like my build, my frame over just like these little kind of bird people, and she's just like screaming punk music. I was like, oh, this is so fun. I was like, do you have a music video for this? She was like, no. And I was like, okay. I was like, hold on. I was like, I have people who would definitely be in a nun fight video. And my friend Melanie, she has a play that she wrote called Nothing Special. It's all about Edie Sedgwick and kind of like the 1960s and Andy Warhol's factory. And so she's renting this big warehouse space for a couple months. And we've been working on the play. I'm directing it, and we have a couple other people in it and a band. And in this warehouse space, that she's renting. I was like, oh, this would be a great place for a nun fight. I was like, Melanie, like, would you dress up as a nun and can we use your warehouse and like film this video? And she was like, absolutely. And just like every person that I called up, there was only like a couple people who were like, I have family who would be like deeply offended. And like, it sounds so much fun, but like can't do this one, but please call me up for the next one. Like Los Angeles is just like a playground for creatives of just everybody wants to like go out and have fun. And it's really easy to just be like, hey guys, you want to do like a sunrise photo shoot on film like this Sunday? And people are like, sure, I'll set my alarms. It's just,
I'm so curious because like a concept that we talk a lot on this podcast is about imposter syndrome. And it to me, it sounds like you have none because you're just like, I'm going to go for what I want to go for. But like, have you ever even struggled with that? Or like, what does that look like to you?
Yeah. Well, okay. So as a kid, I had no such thing as imposter syndrome. I was so unapologetically myself. My dad always talks about when I went into like speak with agents at Buckwald. When we sat down with Matt Jackson, who's also my agent now as well, when we sat down with him, he saw that I was wearing Lizzie McGuire shoes, and I had never seen the show. I just loved like the blue coloring, and like they lit up, and they had flowers on them. I thought they were so cool, and so he asked me. He was like, "Oh, you a Hillary Duff fan?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, sure." And he was like, "Well, who do you want to be when you grow up?" I was like, "Me." and it was just this thing where it was like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? Who do I want to be when I grow up? It was like, I'm gonna be me. And so I've tried to come back to that of like, I think social media is what like kind of sucks me into that state of like, it's like just this direct comparison of yourself to others, and you're just the endless scroll, and it's really easy to kind of, get into dark places through social media. The more I cut that out of just like the scrolling, the more I cut that out, the more I started like actually reaching out to my friends and like going and seeing people, because it's like, oh, I don't know what people are doing unless I actually like go out to lunch with them. This
is so fantastic timing, because I was actually just having another interview with another guest, Carlos Whitaker, who wrote this book, How to Human. And his whole thing is about like seeing people, meeting them where they are, and actually like being present. And so we were talking a lot about this exact topic of, the idea of technology really pulls us away from what it actually should have been intended for, which is connection. And it's no longer actually making us feel connected, but it's making us feel very isolated and no longer human with each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As a teenager, I had a long string of bad boyfriends, but one of them wanted me to constantly check in over text with him, of just like every 5 minutes wanted me to text him to make sure that I don't know. But it like created this feeling of like, I didn't want to see people or go out anymore, because I was like, I don't want to be the person who's just like absorbed in my phone and texting all the time. And I'm very, very conscious of that now. Like Dylan and I don't bring our phones on sets, and like we don't like take our phones out at lunch. Like it makes me uncomfortable to even have like phones on the table.
Yeah. Wow. I can learn a thing or two from you on that, because I feel like even though I try to be conscious of it, I have such a like circular relationship with it when it comes to like, I'll delete all of the social media apps from my phone, but then I'll be like, well, all it takes is just like my face to bring them back, right? Like just do the quick face scan and then they're back on there. And it's like, I need another layer of like accountability almost.
Yeah. It's really difficult these days, because business and social life and just safety and calling the hospital, like everything is all connected in the same device, that also like just... I don't like being accessible.
Yeah.
And especially like as a creative too, it's like, if I'm in the zone or in a headspace, and like I've not been diagnosed with ADHD, but I definitely find tendencies. And when you get in the zone of something, like the last thing you want is just like the notifications going off. And
completely. It's very smart to stay in tune with like what your kind of pulls are, and knowing that would take you out of it completely. That's actually something I really, really want to explore more. And maybe I'll have a guest on here one day about ADHD in women, and how that is becoming more and more frequent that women are getting diagnosed later in life because it manifests so different than it does in what the typical stereotype that has it is like a young male. And
Totally.
it's one of those things I've often wondered too, where I'm like, gosh, is multitasking actually a sign of something more? The fact that like I can't focus on one single thing at any given point, and then your phone rings and it or just pings these days, and it's like takes you away from that flow state.
Yeah, no, 100%. I love going on walks without even bringing my phone.
Yeah.
Like just the freeing feeling of like occasionally Dylan and I will be like going to the grocery store and I'm like, do we even need our phones?
Just leave your phone. How rebellious. Isn't that just kind of crazy to even that's even a thing that like you feel rebellious for just leaving your phone behind on a walk?
Right.
And feels like that's the point of a walk.
That's the thing is that occasionally like I'll leave my phone behind and I'll like go on a walk and like I'll go a little further than planned. Like I'll be like, oh, I'm running to the corner store to grab this. And then I'll be like, oh, it's a nice day. I should go around the block. And then I'll be going around the block and I'm like, I don't know what time it is. So I don't know how much time has gone by. And like if Dylan's worried about me and my phone's at home, but I'm like, I'm going to be like if 30 minutes went by, he might get a little concerned or like text me and see that my phone's at home. But like, I'm not going to be gone for hours. Like, it'll be fine eventually.
So I'm curious, kind of changing gears a little bit as we talk more about like meeting people where they are and as humans. And I feel like you being in the entertainment industry, something that the pandemic did was make me realize like when industries are greatly impacted by specific events, right? And I own a travel agency, so having that during COVID was like not a benefit, right? And my husband and I are both in it together, and it was like, oh, this thing is leveled. And granted, everyone had their stuff that they were dealing with during this time. Everyone's lives got leveled in some way or another, but there's something about when it's your industry and you can no longer actually perform the functions and be fulfilled in the way that you're used to. And I feel like entertainment's been hit like kind of back to back in that way with between the pandemic and now the writer strike that's going on. I don't know how much you feel comfortable talking about that, but I just wanted to bring it up and just like, how are you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you. It made me, the pandemic definitely like that whole leveling effect. It's funny because I definitely have magical thinking and definitely was like shooting. I was like, oh man, I caused this to happen because I'm always sitting around wishing like, man, I wish everything shut down for like several months so I could just work on my scripts and just like paint and work on my scripts with no one in the world. Nobody would
You're
come
like,
over,
but not like that. Like, not like this was not what I meant.
I'm like, no, I didn't want people to die. Oh God, this is horrifying. Yeah, no, it was pretty. Yeah, the lifestyle was sweet. The atmosphere was nightmarish.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the art was strange.
Yeah. Well, what about like right now too? Do you feel like a similar cadence, or are you able to like go on a little bit more when it comes to like actually fulfilling your kind of professional endeavors, I guess?
Well, we were geared up to go. We had just so Dylan and I, when we first started dating, we were doing Astrid Clover together, and he brought his like photography gear, which was like DSLRs, nice cameras. He started bringing an audio gear. It just like leveled up the show. It kind of made me realize like, oh, we can actually make things that look a little bit more professional. We started doing short films and we started submitting those to festivals. And through that, we were able to kind of get enough, belief in us that we started fundraising for our first feature film, one that I wrote and Dylan directed, and we're in post-production for it now, and it's absolutely beautiful. I'm so excited about it. But putting myself back in that headspace of early 2020, it was like we were like getting out on the tarmac, like getting ready to go wheels up, like shoot this thing in the spring. And we were like, talking with actors about scheduling. And then I was working on the show AP Bio at the time. And I remember everybody being like, we're going to take a 2-week break. And like, just kind of the lead up of my mom had been saying for several weeks, like, oh, you should start buying like canned food and water. She'd been listening to some podcasts. She's very like a health nut.
Yeah.
And she'd been listening to this podcast, and it's the kind of thing where she was like, we're about to go into quarantine. Like everything's going to shut down. And I was like, do you know what that would do to the economy? Like, we're not going to shut down. And I was like, oh crap. And yeah, it's like the 2 weeks went by and it was like, oh no, this is going to be a lot longer than 2 weeks. And we started looking at what productions had to actually jump through in order to shoot. And it was pretty much like, if you are Lionsgate or like a celebrity with your own like production company and like capital that you can put into it, like
Sunshine or something.
Yeah, people were pretty much like renting out sound stages and like camping everybody there. So it's kind of like, okay, everybody comes into town. They all like quarantine for like 10, 20 days kind of thing. And then we're all working and kind of camping together. It was like intense. It's like an indie project can't afford that. You're trying to put every single penny on screen. And it's like when you can barely like figure out how to like pay for the props and the actors and the set pieces. It's like the price of COVID tests at one time, like when that first became a thing.
It sounds like you're pretty scrappy. So I'm curious, like, what does that, when you encounter that kind of like adversity, what comes of that for you? Because you don't strike me as the type that's like, I'll just sit and wait for it to pass. Like, it feels like you would just say like, all right, I'm going to turn my ship in a different direction and like take advantage of this in a different way.
Yeah. So kind of what I ended up doing was I knew that this film that we had been working on, it was this thriller that takes place out in the middle of nowhere. We wanted it to be very like, our love letter to old school cinema and to The Shining. Big Kubrick fans. We're like, this film requires budget, and we like have such a blessing by being able to have gathered like this much of a budget for our like debut feature, like mine as a writer and his as a director. And we're like, we don't want half of it to get eaten up by COVID just because we're impatient. And so I was like, let's put this one right over here. Like it was, I tried to just look at it as like, this is perfect timing because like we're like, we have like money in the bank and it's just going to sit there. And all we have to do is just be patient. Like we didn't put deposits down on anything. Like, it's not like contracts are lapsing with actors and we're losing whatever. We didn't have a location or something. Like it just gave us more time. And I ended up working on the script over like the course of 2 years of just really like maturing the script and really delving into it, deconstructing it. And it would have been a great movie, but now it just like the layers are there. And it's something that I can be really, really proud of, saying like, oh, I wrote this and I thought about this, and it's a time bending thriller. So I like had to think through a lot of timelines and make sure, like poke it for plot holes through and through.
I love it. Was it, now I'm trying to remember, was it you that I read as a big Chuck Palahniuk fan?
Yes.
Yes. I just finished Consider This. Have you read that yet?
Ooh, not yet.
Yeah, it's his writing memoir and advice. And so, it was very good. And then like done in very true Palahniuk style where you're kind of, he's giving examples that are just like totally out of left field. And you're like, well, that makes sense for the work that you create, but then also it's applicable to what we're doing. And sorry, that just made me think of, as you talk about the layers and leveling the script, like the writing element of it.
Absolutely. That I have to add that to my like very, very long reading list, which I've been prioritizing the morning pages and the drawing, and then the reading has been like my little, I'm like, at least if I can at least read 2 pages, and I'm like, I'm never going to get through it.
Totally. No, I feel the same way, but plus with kids running around. So it's like, how am I ever going to, it's audiobooks or nothing these days. No,
I don't understand how you do that. I very much like people ask me about kids, and I'm like, my production company's my baby. My movies are my baby. Every painting is my baby. Like I don't have time. And
I felt that really, really strongly with my business. And then like, it felt like this really interesting identity shift. And that's also kind of why I was curious, like what did the adversity make you do? Because like with me, adversity and motherhood came at the exact same time. And I feel like it very much made me decide like, okay, I'm going to evolve. I'm going to go to this next layer. And oftentimes I think we think evolution is like this thing outside of us. And really what it was like, I'm actually going to go a layer deeper that I know is within me, but that I haven't been tapping into yet. And it sounds like you are pretty well versed in the art of evolution.
Oh my gosh. I love everything you just said. I 100% agree with. That's very cool. Yeah. We've been meditating a lot lately. we meditate every morning together. That's, I think, a big anchor and of how we work together. That would probably be my first step to any couples who ask the question of like, how do you guys work together? It's like, you need to meditate together.
Yeah. You guys need some time together, but not talking.
Yeah. I'm like, because we can have an adult conversation with each other.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Because we can just take the emotions down, do our deep breathing, say, sorry, I'm a little hungry.
Totally. I love it. Well, and that kind of usually leads to like, that's the working on yourself or on your business instead of in yourself. Like that's the like,
it's
intentional
been
time.
It's been such a wonderful way to kind of evolve simultaneously with him. I always tell him like it's one of my greatest joys is just getting to watch him grow up.
Cool. Grow up. I love it.
Yeah,
that's
no,
beautiful.
because the two of us, we've known each other since we were kids, and even still, it's like we look back at like our marriage photos, I'm like, oh my God, the babies got married. This is crazy.
That's an amazing partnership to be able to support one another as you are both kind of like becoming that next version of yourself. I think that's incredibly important to have.
And you get to see things come full circle because, like I said, we got into filmmaking together because he had the camera gear from photography. And now as the filmmaking industry has kind of like stumbled a little bit, we've still been able to, we ended up pivoting because during the quarantine, my former castmate Matthew Scott, he wrote a film and we ended up doing it like a quarantine movie because it was kind of written during that time and it was very isolating. And so we were able to pivot and put our energy there. And another pivot that we've done is because of, the strike, we are putting our time into this play. It's like this immersive theater experience I was talking about, Nothing Special, that my friend Melanie wrote. And Dylan's doing all the photos for it because it kind of started out where we just like needed poster photos. And Melanie and we're doing it with our friends, Aparna and Kristen, the three of them, they're all playing Edie Sedgwick. They had been looking up like Edie photos and showing me like the style of photos that they wanted, that black and white and grainy, like 65 look. And I just, I show it to Dylan and Dylan just has the brain for like, he's done all the research and the reading. And he's like picked up all the cameras and he knows like everything about like the film and the lenses. And of course, if he heard me say that, he'd be like, I don't even know close to everything. Like I haven't even moved on to medium format cameras yet. And I'm like, the fact you know what that is, it's just like, oh, you're a photographer. He suffers from the imposter syndrome with photography. But it's cool because through doing Nothing Special, he's kind of like, it's the first time that he's not just photographing like landscapes and birds and showing me and then kind of posting them quietly to like a little Instagram page and that he doesn't tell people about. But it's like, he's showing them these photos and they're like blown away being like, oh my God, that's exactly what we asked for. Like, how did you just like understand the assignment, execute? And it's the kind of thing where it's like he shows up to the warehouse space and like he knows how to hook up his camera to the lighting gear that's there. And so he's got like the big flash units going off and he's just like he knows his stuff in that realm. And it's cool to watch him like become a photographer. And so I was saying, watching things come full circle in a relationship, it's like, oh, he wanted to be a photographer from the start. So it's like, I'm not even focused on like the strike and the film industry and whatever, because I'm like, oh yeah, we've got our movies. And of course I want to make more movies one day, but I'm in like no rush. And in the meantime, we're developing like our painting and writing and his photography and we're set. We just kind of like ebb and flow with the waves. And I try to be, a master of some, but at least a jack of all trades.
Right. But also just supporting like what you knew he was capable of doing all along. And so this gave you the time to like strip that back and say like, this is actually kind of who you were meant to be, at least in this next phase and iteration.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
100%. Yeah, no, it's really cool to watch him, yeah, get more into photography
Cool.
and do, yeah, photo shoots and talk about like, oh,
I
yeah,
love it.
we'd start talking about business plans, and he's like, what do you think I could charge? And I'm like, I don't know, what do you think you could
That's
charge?
such a special relationship. I feel it's so unique. It's so unique to be able to like actually work with your partner and to
Yeah.
do it in a way that like makes you each better. That is completely
Mhm.
something that I've learned from Jeremy, from Cody's brother. And
Yeah.
um, just that level of support where you feel like you can take risks because you have the safety net of that person's love and
100%.
support to fall back on. Like that is, as why I'm doing this podcast, even like I it just like
Yeah.
this is an out of left field activity compared to like our normal day to day. And I've been working behind the scenes between like this and writing and just kind of like moving into thought leadership. And
Yeah.
Jeremy, every step of the way has been like, awesome, you've got this, go for it. I will be the place, your platform, essentially. And it's just so special.
That's beautiful.
I'll tell you, I have this cheesy question that I ask every guest, but it's because it's inspired by mine and Jeremy's relationship, which was during these times that were like very difficult for us. We would go on, we would call them our LFWs, our little effing walks every day when like the world was shutting down and we were having to make like very difficult decisions in business. And we're like, all right, time to go on our walk. So it was like all you could do. And every time on those walks, we would ask each other the question of like, what made you smile today? And, at first that question, you're kind of like, well, like it's really not
my gratitude journal in that time is not a gratitude journal.
Totally. It's kind of like just a vent session, right? Well, it made me smile that like you didn't come in the room when I wanted to have space. Like, but in all reality,
like, I'm glad I didn't die today. Like,
I'm happy that we survived. So it is though something that's stuck with us and it's stuck in our family and like even our little 3-year-old Mila is still, she's like, what is your happy today? Like she's, evolved into it. But I am curious, like, it's early in LA right now. So maybe nothing necessarily has made you smile today, but like 24 hours, like what's made you smile lately?
Absolutely. Well, I think actually within this past year, I've kind of unlocked like the cheat code to life of the morning, like what the morning pages are supposed to be is like setting aside like a morning routine for yourself. Cause like, I don't know about you, but it takes me a little while to feel like myself. I kind of like, gotta go through kind of like get some stuff out of my brain, waking up from a night of sleep. It's like getting out that kind of stream of consciousness, taking a second to stretch. I just took a yoga class with somebody that I've been working with for 3 years, and she told me that my spine was leaning and just ever so slightly to the right. I was thinking like, oh, that's probably from the morning pages. I was like, what can I do? Because she was like, yeah, she was asking me like if I work on the computer a lot. Yeah, she's like asking me if I work on the computer a lot, asking me about like the mouse, like maybe try to switch hands or something. And so I've been trying to become ambidextrous.
Yeah.
In my morning
God.
pages,
well, you also cracked me up
longer.
Totally. But you also chose in binder pages. Like I made a little mental note of that when you were like, my pages are really long. You chose a very long object to write on.
Yeah, and the stack is like this big now. And I just have this drawer building of paper. And I'm like,
that's
this
hilarious.
Is wild.
I choose like the little
really
like
cool
these journals, so I feel very accomplished when I
I'm so tempted, but like I least I allow myself to, if there's a particularly stressful day and I only get out one page, it's fine. But the challenge of the 3 pages and the accomplished feeling I have when I get to the end of 3 binder pages is pretty wild. But yeah, setting aside that time, it's like I've now, because of my slight curve to the right, and am doing my stretching every morning, because she just recommended like a real simple, like kind of lay down on the floor in corpse pose and just like look to the side. It's like small movements. Her whole thing is, she says, you already know how to do big things, like, so practice doing small things. And
whoa. Yeah. That's like a major takeaway, right? For overachievers. Like, I think we might both fall into that category.
100%. And so she's got this little stretch that she taught me. And it was just actually just a couple weeks ago of just like, you lay on the ground in corpse pose. And it's just like, you look to this side and there's just like a subtle shoulder movement of you just kind of push this shoulder into the ground and you raise this one, and it's just like a neck stretch, and then like the whole like spine kind of stretch, and just like arching your back a little, like pushing your pelvis into the floor. It's just like real subtle, but it like makes you feel longer afterward. And then right after, Dylan and I meditate, because it's usually he needs to brush his teeth in the morning. So I do my little stretch and he brushes his teeth. And then we sit down on the floor and we meditate together. We find some little like 5 to 10 minute YouTube video that's just like a guided morning meditation. So like already lots of smiles. But the big like the first real like joy of my day, where I feel that kind of like kid at Disneyland feeling, is we have a bird feeder outside. And so like every morning, like going out and checking the bird feeder is like the joy.
The joy. Are you getting to meet different types of birds every time? Are you like now ornithology expert? Like,
so I've learned so much about bird watching over quarantine. Audubon has been doing bird meditations and bird sits.
What?
Oh my gosh, they're so cool. You learn all these little things, like she talks about how when you sit down, the bird activity you're going to see, like you get to watch them in their like comfortable habitat and they're moving around you and they come to you. Whereas if you're walking around and you're making all the noise, you're scaring them away before you even get there. And there's all these cool things you can learn from just listening and being still. One of the things that she talks about is rubbing your fingers together, getting that kind of like papery sound really close to your ears, and then just slowly bringing it away from you as you keep making that sound. And you try to focus on the sound, because by the time you get really far away, your ears are just like tuned into the space around you a lot more. And so you can hear. It's really cool. And so you can hear bird sounds from a lot further away. There's also a fun trick she taught us, where if you listen for where you don't hear birds, like if you close your eyes and you're like, I don't hear any chirping in that direction, and you point and you look that way, you'll see like a cat or a dog or like some sort of like threat, something that like, oh, like the birds all went quiet over there.
Like incredible that you're tuning it. It's really interesting. It reminds me, now that we're going on this bird tangent, it reminds me of tangent. I own a travel agency. I've done a lot of traveling in my life. I've gotten to go to Africa a few times and do safaris, which are like life-changing and just the most incredible experience all around. But most of the time when people are going on a safari, they're like, I want to see the big five. They're literally named the big five, right? Like we want to see the largest, the elephants and the lions, like the largest animals out here. And all of the guides who have now been doing this for decades, I noticed would be like, those are great. But look at this bird over here. And at first you're like, okay, no, take me to see a leopard, please. Like I need to see the big things. But they've started learning like the big things are not necessarily what is so amazing about this 100%. World and about what surrounds us. Like start paying attention to the small. It's what you just said. I love what your yoga teacher said. It's like, you already know how to do the big things. Start paying attention to the small.
Absolutely. 100%. Synchronicities all around.
That's my takeaway. Okay. All right, cool. Birds. Well, let's, with our limited time left, I want to hear a little bit more about like how our listeners can kind of like stay in touch with what you're doing. Like it sounds like you've got some really cool projects in the hopper. Like what should they be looking out for? How do they know when it's happening? Like what's the best way to follow you? Can you tell us more about all those things?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, my Instagram page is always Allisyn. Same thing on, it's not called Twitter now, it's X, right?
Oh, that's right. I don't know. I've been living a little bit under a rock lately when it comes to social media. But I think you're right.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm always Allisyn on everything. Instagram, I update the most. Again, I don't really check it. I just kind of post little updates of what I'm doing. What I've got coming up in the works. My name is spelled Allisyn. So if you just type that
and what
in,
you've got coming up is an immersive theater. Immersive theater, is that what it? Like,
So Nothing Special. It's happening in Los Angeles in November, November 8th through 11th. Cool. Go on the Nothing Special Show Instagram page and make sure you're tuning in and subscribing to the newsletter, so you can find out more details and be notified when tickets go on sale. It's going to be a trip. I'm really pumped about it. It's going to be kind of a party meets immersive theater, and it's
sounds
really
like an obvious yes.
Yeah. No, cool. Come to the factory.
Come to the factory. Noted. All right, Allisyn, you rock. I'm really glad Cody put us in touch. Thank you for this conversation today about like how we can be better at working on ourselves and how that makes us better, not just leaders, but better humans. You have really enlightened me. Thanks.
Thank you. Absolutely. This was a very wonderful way to start my day.
And that, lovely listeners, brings us to the end of today's episode. We truly hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of leadership and professional development with Who Made You the Boss? If you've gained some valuable insights today, we would love to hear from you. Please take a moment, go to your favorite podcast platform, search for Who Made You the Boss, and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That feedback helps us tremendously as we're creating content that resonates and empowers. Stay connected with us too by visiting lindsayepperly.com, and there you can subscribe to our newsletter and ensure you never miss an episode or an exciting update. You can connect with me personally as well on Instagram and LinkedIn, and let's continue the conversation with ourselves and other like-minded individuals who are redefining what it means to be the boss of our own lives. So thank you, listeners, for being a part of this journey. And until next time, remember, you have the power to shape your destiny. So keep leading, keep learning, and most importantly, keep being the boss of your own incredible story.